President, I want to tell you a story about Tina Pierce. Tina grew up on a farm in Idaho. She was the first in her family to earn a college degree. After earning her degree in accounting, she served in the United States Marines, where she was deployed to Kuwait as the comptroller for contingency operations at Desert Thunder. She earned her MBA from Colorado State University. She graduated at the top of her class. She then became a CPA, a certified public accountant. She's been married 26 years, she has 4 children. Her husband also served in the United States Marine Corps as a colonel. Why do I bring her up? Well, here's why. President Trump nominated Tina Pierce to be the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Energy. She went through the process with the Committee of Energy and Natural Resources, where she was voted out in May of this year, 13-7. Pretty strong bipartisan vote. She passed out of committee and then has sat waiting. What's interesting is the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Energy has actually never had a vote in the Senate on the floor of the Senate. It's always been a position that in the past went through committee, was approved in committee, and then passed on the Senate floor either by unanimous consent, a voice vote, or was put what's called en bloc, grouped together with other nominees and passed all in a group. This is not the Secretary of Defense. This is not the Secretary of Energy or the Secretary of State. This is the CFO for the Department of Energy. It's one of those 1,200 positions that the Senate must confirm, but historically has always been confirmed in a very fast-track process after they pass out of committee, especially when they pass out 13-7 out of a committee. Everyone knows they're going to pass. You see, that's the way it used to be, but not anymore. Mr. President, my Democratic colleagues have determined that Tina Pierce should be filibustered so this Marine, married to a Marine, mom, highly qualified, graduated top of her class, has to sit at home and wait as Democrats block every single nominee on the floor. So she waits since May of this year to see if the Senate can open up enough time to have a vote. Oh, that's not the only one. Jonathan Morrison is President Trump's nominee to the administrator for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Jonathan was the first in his family to go to college. He graduated from the University of Pittsburgh in 2001, went on to law school at Notre Dame. He also got a Master's of Laws degree in International Business Law from the University College in London. Over his career, he's worked with automobiles. He's also served as the chief counsel at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. He is supremely qualified to be able to lead this part of the administration. He came out of the committee in a vote of 16-12, but he also just sits and waits because there's not enough time. In every administration, there are lots of nominees. There's 1,200 nominees, and everyone knows there's so many nominees, and so you pick and choose which nominees you actually want to be able to debate. That's normal in every single administration. They all have to go through the committee process, but when it comes to the floor, you don't dedicate all the floor time to different what are called sub-cabinet officials. Those get fought out in committee, and then they come to the Senate floor, and they either pass en bloc, or they pass by a voice vote or unanimous consent, or if they're highly controversial individuals, maybe we'll have a floor vote on this. So it's been 200 days of this administration. Let me give you some examples of this. What's called a cloture vote, a demand to be able to go through this full, long process. Under Bill Clinton, there was 0 of those. 0. Were there controversial nominees? Sure there were, but they worked through the process on that. Under George W. Bush, 0 cloture votes that were required in the Senate. There were 9 under President Obama, but then under the first President Trump administration, 38 all of a sudden. You know what we did as Republicans? We pushed back, and there were 71 under President Biden. It was kind of a tit for tat. Now our Democratic colleagues have determined this is not going to be tit for tat anymore. We're just going to shut the whole place down. Now under President Trump, 134. What does this really mean? This really means that we're not moving anyone across the floor unless they actually have 3 hours of floor time. That is a vote on a motion to proceed. That is 2 hours of debate time here on the floor for that person, and then another vote after that. It takes a total of 3 hours to be able to do that whole process. 3 hours for every single person when you've got 1,200 people. You would think during that time, that's the 2 hours of debate time, we would have massive amounts of debate, because if these are highly controversial nominees, of course there's going to be debate on this floor to be able to discuss all these highly controversial people. Well, let's talk about that. For these sub-cabinet officials that are there, there's been 109 of them. All of them have been filibustered through the process to say they demand it. The average Democratic debate time for these 109 people has been 2 minutes. Actually, technically, 2 minutes, 12 seconds. So 2 hours of time that they have demanded to debate these highly controversial people, and they've allocated 2 minutes, 12 seconds on average. Well, interestingly enough, 81 of those 109 Democrats actually did 0 debate on the floor. This was just about shutting the Senate floor down. That's all it was. This was about attacking President Trump, not acknowledging the fact that he won the election and that he should be able to actually go through the process to be able to have his staff like every other president has had. Interestingly enough, I've had folks that have said to me, well, how do you actually fix this? How does this get better? Well, the first way this gets better is typically in the past, Republicans and Democrats would sit down together and would say, this is intolerable. We can't actually get to other bills. You see, right now, to be able to do the 3 hours that it takes to be able to move it, just with the nominees that we have in the backlog right now, not counting the 700 more nominees that are still coming in the days ahead, it would take 900 hours the rest of this year to actually move those through across the floor, 900 hours. Well, if you look at the rest of the year, the Senate would have to be actively voting and in process 80 hours a week, every single week, only on nominations. That would mean we would not do the National Defense Authorization, we would not do the 12 appropriation bills, we would not do a farm bill, we would not do an FAA reauthorization, we would not do any tax policy, we wouldn't do anything else except nominees 80 hours a week. If we did that, we could get caught up on the backlog, but oh wait, we have to keep doing that the next year and the next just to be able to maintain this. So when I say this is intolerable and have never been done in the past, that's what it means. The Senate has to do legislation as well as nominations. This is a situation that my Democratic colleagues have broken the Senate structure. We got to figure out a way to be able to fix this that works for Republican or Democrat presidents in the future. Regardless of party, the president has got to be able to move their nominees, and this should not be an issue that once they've gone through committee and been resolved, that they literally can't get to the floor, or that people wait for months and months and months to even get a vote on the floor because there's so little time and we're so backed up. So here's a simple idea. Just like has been done in the past, move folks in groups, just like it's been happened in the past. If you go in the first Trump administration, there were 22 separate votes that were taken, they were called en bloc. Groups of folks that had all been passed out of committee. Under the Biden administration, that happened 17 times, where Republicans allowed Democrats to be able to lump these individuals together, to be able to pass them all together. Under this administration so far, 0, none. Under the first Trump administration, 559 of the 1,200 plus people all went through that process. Under Biden's administration, 277. This is Republicans and Democrats alike. Now it's 0. Because my Democratic colleagues, I assume, have just determined they're going to be the resistance. But what they're setting up is a process where in the future, as soon as there's a Democrat president, this is going to be the same thing. Because Republicans are just going to go tit for tat on that. That's not right for the country. It's not right for then. It's not right for now. So very simply, we've got to get back to legislating, which means we've got to allow the president to be able to have his nominees go through the process. We have a constitutional responsibility to advice and consent. Let's do that in the committee process. Let's bring those to the floor in a debate. Let's actually pass or not pass those individuals, whatever this body may determine, but let's at least get an up or down vote on every single one of these individuals to be able to get this part of our responsibility checked off. Because this week, we're also trying to work on the National Defense Authorization. That's an essential piece of legislation we've got to get done. By the 30th of this month, we're supposed to have 12 appropriation bills done. But we can't get on appropriation bills, and we can't work on the National Defense Authorization the time that it needs while we're backed up with hundreds of nominees, and my Democratic colleagues are blocking literally a mom and a Marine who's a highly qualified CPA to say they can't be the CFO. Please. This is all about trying to attack Trump, but what they're doing is actually stopping the country from getting its business done. So let's get this fixed. That's my request. My colleagues are coming to the floor in the next hour. We're all going to make our case why this is so important that we actually get resolved, not sometime, right now we get this resolved. So with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor to my colleagues who will continue to be able to make the case.